A poor delivery girl found an injured boy in a hidden alley clutching a phone with a number that led directly to a king. She dialed it in desperation. What she didn't know was that the voice on the other end belonged to Lucien, the untouchable vampire king, and the boy she saved was the heart of his empire. Welcome back, my beautiful friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now, let us begin. The city never looked cleaner than in the golden hour glow of the financial district. Glass towers reflected amber light onto polished concrete, turning the hidden service alley into a corridor of cold perfection. Chloe Lynn shifted the insulated delivery bag higher on her shoulder, her bright red jacket catching the last rays of sun. This was the last stop of her triple shift. Her phone buzzed. Delivery confirmed. $8 tip added. $8. Enough for tomorrow's gas, maybe. That's why the boy stood out like a bloodstain on marble. He was slumped against the pristine wall, small and still, wearing what looked like a museum piece, a tailored coat with silver embroidery threading through midnight blue fabric. Hey! Chloe dropped the delivery bag and ran forward. Kid, can you hear me? She pressed 2 fingers to his throat. Nothing. She tried his wrist, her own pulse hammering. Still nothing. But he was shivering, fine tremors running through his small frame. And his skin was porcelain cold, like touching expensive marble. His hand was locked around something. She gently pried his fingers open. A phone? No. A communicator. Sleek black metal with an engraved crest, a crown wrapped in thorns. The screen showed a single contact. Call an emergency. Her thumb pressed it before she could think. 1 ring. 2. Speak. The voice was a command. Low, precise, with an accent that made her think of old money and older power. I found a boy. Unconscious. Behind the Artemis Tower. No pulse, but he's shivering. His eyes. What color? They're closed. Open them. Chloe lifted one eyelid and gasped. Silver iris with a ring of pale gold that shimmered. Silver, she whispered, with gold that moves. Silence stretched. Your name? Chloe Lynn. This kid needs a hospital. Stay exactly where you are. Do not call anyone else. We're en route. The line went dead. She draped her red jacket over him and waited. 2 minutes and 40 seconds. The jet-black armored vehicle glided into the alley with predatory precision, stopping inches from where she sat. The door opened. A man in expensive tactical gear stepped out, his gray eyes sweeping the alley before landing on the boy. His entire body went rigid. 2 more figures emerged. One carried a case. The other, a stretcher. Step back, the first man said. Chloe scrambled up. Will he be okay? He knelt beside the boy, fingers on his throat. Pulse present. Thready. Temperature dropping. Orum's signature confirmed. The word sounded like a death sentence. They lifted the boy with shocking gentleness, loading him into the vehicle. Chloe's red jacket fell to the concrete. Where are you taking him? The man turned. You will remain here. Do not leave this location. You will be collected within the hour. Collected? I need to go home. You will remain here. His hand moved to his ear. Confirmed. The witness is secure. He listened, then looked at Chloe with something like pity. Remain here. For your own safety. The vehicle glided away. Chloe stood alone, her jacket a crumpled heap at her feet, and felt the absolute certainty settle into her bones. Her life, as she knew it, was over. Or it had just begun. 43 minutes. Chloe counted every one of them, sitting against the wall in the pristine alley as the sky turned from gold to violet to black. Her phone buzzed twice, her roommate asking where she was, then her next shift assignment auto-loading. She ignored both. The second vehicle was different. No armor plating. This one was midnight blue, So dark it looked black until the streetlight caught it. The paint job alone probably cost more than her annual income. It stopped with barely a whisper. The man who stepped out wore a charcoal suit that fit like water. Older than the tactical team, maybe 50, with silver threading through dark hair pulled back in a way that suggested precision, not vanity. His eyes were sharp behind thin-rimmed glasses. "Miss Lynn." His voice carried the same accent as the voice on the phone, but smoother. Almost gentle. "I am Thorne. Please come with me." It wasn't a request. Chloe stood, grabbing her delivery bag out of habit. "Where?" "Somewhere safe." He gestured to the open door. "Somewhere with answers." The interior smelled like leather and something else. Something cold and faintly metallic. Chloe slid into a seat that probably cost more than her rent. Thorne settled across from her as the vehicle began to move. Not toward the hospital. Not toward any part of the city she recognized.
Down.
The vehicle descended into what looked like a private underground garage, then kept going. Another level. Another. The walls changed from concrete to something older, stone. Maybe, carved with patterns she couldn't quite focus on. "The boy," Chloe said. "Is he?" "Prince Cassian is receiving treatment." Thorne's expression remained neutral. "You made the correct choice by calling." "Prince." The word sat in the air like a challenge. The vehicle stopped. The door opened onto a space that shouldn't exist. A corridor carved from crystal and black stone, lit by what looked like captured starlight. The ceiling soared 30 feet overhead, buttressed with arches that belonged in a cathedral. Tapestries hung between them, ancient, beautiful, depicting battles and ceremonies Chloe had no context for. "This way." Thorne led her through corridors that twisted deeper, each more opulent than the last. They passed rooms glimpsed through doorways, a library with books bound in leather and metal, a hall lined with armor that gleamed like it was still worn, a conservatory filled with night-blooming flowers that glowed faintly blue. Finally, they stopped before doors made of dark wood and silver inlay. Thorne pushed them open. The room beyond was vast. A study, maybe, or a war room. Maps covered one wall, not just of the city, but of territories Chloe didn't recognize. A desk dominated the center, made of black stone shot through with veins of silver. And behind it stood a man who made every other display of wealth look like a rehearsal. He wore a suit the color of deep sapphire, tailored with such precision it looked like armor. Dark hair, sharp features, and eyes, God, his eyes, onyx black and absolutely focused. Not on her. On the boy lying on a chaise behind him, surrounded by medical equipment and those same glowing silver vials, his small chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The man's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Tell me everything." Chloe told him. All of it. The alley, the boy's silver-embroidered coat, the lack of pulse, the communicator, the call. She left nothing out because those onyx eyes didn't allow for omission. Lucien, she assumed this was Lucien, the voice from the phone, listened without moving. When she finished, he stepped around the desk with the controlled grace of something predatory. "You saw no one else?"
"No."
"Heard nothing unusual before you found him?"
"No."
The alley was empty. He studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Then he turned to a cabinet behind his desk, removing something wrapped in black silk. When he unwrapped it, Chloe saw a medallion. Old, tarnished silver with the same crown and thorns crest. "Hold this." Chloe reached out. The moment her fingers touched the metal, nothing happened. It was just cold silver. Lucien's eyes narrowed slightly. He replaced it, withdrew another object. A dagger this time, the hilt wrapped in leather that looked ancient. And this? Again, nothing. Just weight and age. "You feel no burning? No compulsion to drop them?"
"No."
"Should I?" Something shifted in his expression. Not relief. Recalculation. "You are mortal. Completely, ordinarily mortal. He said it like a diagnosis, which means you are either breathtakingly fortunate, or you were placed precisely where you needed to be. I'm a delivery driver, Chloe said, heat rising in her voice. I take shortcuts through alleys because it saves time. That's it. Perhaps. Lucien returned the dagger to the cabinet. Or perhaps someone knew your route. Knew you would find him. Knew you would be compelled to help rather than walk away. That's insane. Papa. The voice was small, barely a whisper. Lucien moved so fast Chloe didn't see him cross the room. He was suddenly kneeling beside the chaise, one hand on the boy's forehead, the other reaching for one of the silver vials. Cassian, don't move. The purge is not complete. But the boy's eyes, those impossible silver and gold eyes, weren't looking at Lucien. They were looking at Chloe. The red jacket girl, Cassian whispered. She stayed. She found you. Yes. She smells like sunlight. Cassian's small hand reached toward Chloe, trembling. It doesn't hurt. Lucien's entire body went still. Then his head turned, those onyx eyes fixing on Chloe with renewed focus. You will not come closer. Chloe hadn't realized she'd taken a step forward. Cassian's eyes fluttered closed again, his breathing evening out. Lucien remained kneeling beside him for a long moment before standing, and when he turned back to Chloe, his expression had hardened into something absolute. Thorn. The advisor appeared in the doorway as if he'd been waiting. Escort Miss Lynn to the eastern guest quarters. She is not to leave. No communication devices. No contact with anyone outside this residence. Lucien's gaze never left Chloe. You are not a prisoner, Miss Lynn. You are a witness. But until I determine whether you are an unwitting pawn of the Silver Hand or simply catastrophically unlucky, you will remain exactly where I can see you. The Silver Hand? Chloe's voice pitched higher. What is?
Thorn. Now.
The hand on her elbow was gentle but immovable. Chloe was led back into the crystal corridors, her mind reeling, the boy's words echoing. She smells like sunlight. The eastern guest quarters had marble floors, a bed the size of Chloe's entire bedroom, and a bathroom with fixtures that looked like they belonged in a palace. She didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed in her delivery uniform, still clutching her bag, watching the door like it might open to reveal something worse than confinement. It did, eventually, just not in the way she expected. Thorn appeared at dawn. At least, she assumed it was dawn, though no natural light reached this deep, with a different expression than before. Almost apologetic. You are permitted to return to your apartment, he said. Briefly. To gather essentials. You will not be alone. The drive up was silent. The vehicle stopped 3 blocks from her building. A deliberate choice, Chloe realized, to avoid attention. Thorn and another operative, a woman with cold eyes and a concealed weapon, walked her to the entrance of the 5-story walk-up that smelled like mildew and someone's perpetual cooking. 15 minutes, the woman said. Chloe's apartment was on the 4th floor. She climbed the stairs, hyper-aware of the 2 shadows following at a precise distance. Her key stuck in the lock, like always. She shouldered the door open. The smell hit her first.
Wrong.
Sharp, metallic, and floral at once. Her apartment had been searched. Not violently, no overturned furniture, but methodically. Drawers left half open. Her closet disturbed. And on her kitchen counter, something that definitely hadn't been there before. A calling card. Heavy stock, cream-colored, with elegant script. The bloodline ends with the abomination. Beneath it, scattered like decoration, was a fine golden powder that caught the weak morning light. Don't touch that. The female operative was suddenly beside her, pulling Chloe back. She spoke into her wrist.
Thorn.
We have Orem. Active trace. The apartment is compromised. Chloe's hands shook. What does that mean? It means they know who you are. The window exploded inward. Chloe hit the floor as glass rained down. A figure in dark tactical gear rolled through, already moving, a blade appearing in their hand that glowed with the same golden shimmer as the powder. The operative fired. The suppressed shot was barely a whisper. The attacker dodged with inhuman speed, closing the distance. That golden blade aimed directly at Chloe's throat.
And stopped.
Frozen mid-strike. Lucian stood in her doorway, one hand extended, and the attacker was simply held, suspended in air by nothing visible, their body rigid, eyes wide with terror. "Silver hand," Lucian said, his voice utterly calm. He walked forward, examining the frozen figure like a specimen. Low level, sent to clean up loose ends. His onyx eyes shifted to Chloe. "You are not a pawn. You are a target." The attacker's neck snapped with a sound like breaking ice. The body crumpled. Chloe couldn't breathe. Lucian crouched beside her, his sapphire suit somehow still immaculate. "If you want to live, Miss Lin, you will tell me why they want you dead." "I don't know." "Then think." It was a command. "What connects you to my son besides proximity?" Chloe's mind raced. Her delivery routes. Her apartment. Her father. "My dad," she whispered. "He was a courier. Long haul. He died 6 months ago, but he kept a ledger. Everything he delivered, coded. I never understood it." Lucian's expression sharpened. "Where is this ledger?" Chloe pointed to the floor vent with trembling fingers. The ledger was unremarkable. A battered composition notebook with water-stained pages and her father's cramped handwriting filling every line. Dates, locations, alphanumeric codes that meant nothing to anyone but him. Lucian spread it across the table in his study, Chloe standing close enough to feel the cold radiating from him. Not temperature, something else. Something that made her instincts scream to step back even as her curiosity pulled her forward. "Your father used a substitution cipher," Lucian said, tracing a finger down a column. "But the key is inconsistent. Here, the sequence suggests a location-based variable. Here, a date shift pattern. He changed it every month." Chloe leaned in, pointing to a notation in the margin. "See that symbol? That's February. He used my birthday digits as the offset." Their shoulders almost touched. Lucian went very still, then shifted slightly away. "Show me." They worked for hours. Chloe translated her father's shorthand while Lucian cross-referenced the decoded locations against maps that showed the city's hidden infrastructure, tunnels, safe houses, transit routes that shouldn't exist. A pattern emerged. Her father had been delivering to the court specialized medical supplies, rare materials, all of it legitimate, but the final 3 months showed something else. Pickups from locations that, when decoded, revealed a warehouse district that had been abandoned for years. Someone was using her father's legitimate routes to mask their own supply chain, Lucian said. His voice had dropped lower, that accent thickening slightly. And when he noticed, or when they feared he might, they killed him. Chloe's hands clenched. The accident. The brake failure. It wasn't an accident. Lucian looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in those onyx eyes. Not quite sympathy. Recognition, perhaps.
No.
It was not. The door opened. Cashin stood in the doorway, still pale but upright, wearing a fresh silver-embroidered coat. His eyes lit up when he saw Chloe. "You're still here." "I'm helping your father." Cashin crossed the room with careful steps, standing close to Chloe in a way that made Lucian's jaw tighten. "You smell less like sunlight now. More like old paper." "I've been reading." Chloe couldn't help but smile. "Do you want to see my favorite room?" Lucian started to object, but Cashin was already tugging Chloe's hand, pulling her toward the door with surprising strength for someone who'd been unconscious 12 hours ago. The armory was deeper in the castle, through corridors lined with portraits of severe-looking men and women in clothing that spanned centuries. The room itself was vast, Walls covered in weapons that ranged from ancient bronze to what looked like modern tactical gear modified with strange engravings. Cassian pointed to a sword mounted in a place of honor. That one belonged to Lord Valerius. He gave it to the court 300 years ago, when he swore his oath. Chloe froze. The hilt bore a sigil. Not the crown and thorns of the royal house, but something else. A hand pierced by silver arrows. The same sigil she'd seen in her father's ledger, sketched in the margin beside one of the warehouse locations. Cassian, she said carefully. Who is Lord Valerius? Papa's oldest advisor. He's been with our family since the beginning. Cassian tilted his head. Why? Because that sigil just connected a 300-year-old vampire lord to the people who poisoned you, Chloe thought. No reason, she said. Just curious. But when they returned to the study, Lucian took one look at her face and knew. Lucian dressed her himself. Not physically. Thorn brought the gown, midnight blue silk that moved like water, but Lucian appeared in her quarters as she struggled with the unfamiliar closures, his expression grim. You will stand beside me during the session, he said, fastening the clasp at her neck with efficient fingers that didn't quite touch her skin. You will say nothing unless directly addressed. You will not react, regardless of what you hear. What am I proving exactly? That you are precisely what you appear to be. Mortal. Innocent. Untouched by court politics. His hands stilled. If Valerius believes you are merely a witness, he may reveal himself. And if he doesn't believe that? Lucian's eyes met hers in the mirror. Then you will die very quickly, and I will ensure it is painless. The court chamber was carved from the same crystal and onyx as the rest of the castle, but larger. A vast circular space with a domed ceiling that seemed to capture and refract light that had no source. Tiered seating rows on all sides, filled with figures in clothing that ranged from modern suits to garments centuries old. All of them impossibly beautiful. Impossibly still. Lucian took his place on a raised dais, Cassian standing to his right in his silver coat, small and defiant. Chloe stood to his left, feeling every eye in the room tracking her pulse. A figure rose from the first tier. Ancient, with silver hair pulled back severely, wearing robes of deep crimson that looked like they predated the building itself. His face was sharp, aristocratic, and when he smiled, Chloe saw the truth in his teeth. Lord Valerius, Lucian acknowledged, his voice carrying effortlessly. You called this session. I did, my king. Valerius's voice was smooth, cultured, with an accent that made Lucian sound modern. I have concerns. The attack on Prince Cassian. The appearance of this mortal. His gaze slid to Chloe. The security breach that allowed Orem into our very heart. Miss Lin found my son. She is under my protection. How convenient. Valerius descended the steps with predatory grace. A mortal courier's daughter who just happens to know our supply routes. Who just happens to find the prince. Who carries a ledger that implicates our most trusted channels. He stopped at the base of the dais. Or perhaps, my king, she was placed. The room went absolutely silent. You question my judgment, Lucian said. It wasn't a question. I question the wisdom of allowing a hybrid heir to rule our kingdom. Valerius's voice rose. And I question the judgment of a king who would endanger us all for the sake of... The explosion came from the eastern corridor. Not large. Precise. Enough to shatter the crystal doors and send shards raining down. Figures in tactical gear poured through, silver hand, Chloe realized, recognizing the golden shimmer on their blades. The court erupted. Lucian moved like lightning toward the attackers, and in that split second of chaos, Valerius struck. His hand closed around Cassian's arm. The boy cried out, and Valerius pulled him backward through a section of wall that simply opened. A hidden passage. Chloe didn't think. She ran. Chloe hit the secret passage at a dead run, the silk gown tearing as she threw herself through before it closed. Darkness swallowed her, but she heard them ahead, Cassion's sharp breathing, Valerius's measured footsteps. Then hands grabbed her, yanking her backward into cold marble and furious onyx eyes. "Are you insane?" Lucian hissed. He took Cassion. "I know." Lucian's grip shifted to her wrist, pulling her back toward the court chamber where Thorn and 4 operatives waited, already armed. The silver-hand attackers lay motionless on the crystal floor.
Thorn.
Lock down every exit. Full sweep of the lower passages. "My king," the lower network spans 14 square miles. Without knowing which route. "I know which route." Chloe's voice cut through. All eyes turned to her. "The passages. They connect to the old city maintenance tunnels, don't they? The pre-subway infrastructure?" Lucian's expression sharpened. "How do you?" "My father used them. Shortcuts between districts when traffic was impossible. He mapped them in the ledger." She pulled free of Lucian's grip, moving to the nearest wall where a map of the modern city hung.
"Here."
If this castle is under the financial district, then the passages would connect to the old freight network that ran beneath 5th and Lexington. There are only 3 exits large enough for an adult carrying a child. She traced the routes with her finger, seeing her father's cramped notes in her mind. But only one connects to an abandoned station platform. Valerius would need somewhere secure. Somewhere he's prepared. Lucian stared at her for 3 seconds that felt like hours. "Show us." They moved fast. Chloe led them through passages that shifted from crystal to carved stone to raw tunnel, following the logic of infrastructure she'd memorized from a dead man's notebook. Thorn stayed at her shoulder, weapon drawn. Lucian moved ahead like a shadow given form. "Left here," Chloe said at a junction where 3 passages met. The air smelled different, staler, with a faint tang of rust and old electricity. "This connects to the freight line. There'll be a maintenance ladder in 40 feet. There was. They descended into darkness that even vampire eyes struggled with, following a tunnel lined with cables and pipes that hadn't seen maintenance in decades. Chloe's heels, stupid ceremonial shoes, caught on the uneven ground. She kicked them off, kept moving. "Stop." Lucian's hand shot out. Ahead, light. Not electric, the warm flicker of fire. And voices. Cassion's voice, high and frightened. "You swore an oath to my father." "I swore an oath to a king, not to the abomination he created." Valerius's voice echoed off tunnel walls. "Your existence is a corruption, child. Half mortal. A weakness that will destroy everything we've built." Lucian's face went absolutely still. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Thorn. Flanking positions. No one touches my son but me." He looked at Chloe. "Can you get closer without being seen?" She nodded at the maintenance catwalks overhead. "Yes." "Then go. And when I give the signal," his eyes flashed with something ancient and terrible, "make sure he looks up." The metal chunk hit the platform with a sharp clang. Valerius's head snapped up. Lucian exploded from the shadows. He moved faster than Chloe's eyes could track, one moment hidden. The next his hand was around Valerius's wrist, the one coated in golden aurum. The ancient vampire twisted, using Cassion as a shield, and Lucian had to pull back or risk touching his son with those deadly fingers. "You hesitate," Valerius hissed. "Because of the abomination. This is why he makes you weak." Chloe dropped. Not jumped, she'd never make that fall. She swung down through the catwalk grating, hung for a heartbeat, then let go, dropping the last 8 feet onto Valerius's back. Her weight was nothing to him, but surprise was everything. Valerius staggered, his grip on Cassion loosening for just a second. The boy twisted free, scrambling toward the ornate chair where something gleamed, a dagger with a crystalline blade that pulsed with pale blue light. An ancestral relic. Chloe recognized it from the armory. Valerius backhanded her. Chloe flew, hit the wall, tasted copper. But Cashin had the dagger now, his small hands wrapped around the hilt that was too large for him, his silver and gold eyes blazing. "You don't get to touch her," Cashin said, his voice stronger than Chloe had ever heard it. He drove the blade into Valerius's side. The ancient vampire screamed, not pain, but rage, as blue light spread from the wound like frost across glass. His movement slowed, that preternatural speed faltering. Lucian was there. His hand closed around Valerius's throat, lifting him off his feet with terrible ease. The aurum-coated fingers scrabbled uselessly at Lucian's wrist, but whatever power the relic held had stripped Valerius of his strength. "You called my son an abomination," Lucian said, his voice utterly calm. "You poisoned him. You used mortals as pawns and murdered them when they became inconvenient. You broke your oath." "He is half-mortal," Valerius choked out. "A corruption of our pure line. He is my heart." Lucian's grip tightened. And she, his eyes flicked to Chloe, slumped against the wall, blood on her lips, is the reason he still breathes. The crack of Valerius's neck echoed through the abandoned station. Lucian let the body fall, turning immediately to Cashin, checking him for injuries with hands that shook so slightly only Chloe noticed. Then he crossed to her, kneeling on the filthy platform in his sapphire suit. "You dropped through a catwalk onto a vampire 3 times your size. Seemed like a good idea at the time." Chloe tried to smile.
Winced.
Lucian's hand cupped her face with shocking gentleness.
"Thorn."
"Bring the car. And bring the court. All of them. My king. They will witness this." Lucian helped Chloe to her feet, keeping her steady when she swayed. Miss Chloe Lynn saved the heir to this kingdom twice. She decoded the conspiracy that nearly destroyed us. She led us through passages we did not know existed. And she just created the opening that allowed us to end a 300-year-old traitor. His voice carried through the tunnels, formal and absolute. "She is under my permanent protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me." They brought her back to the castle in Lucian's personal vehicle. Cashin pressed against her side despite Thorne's protests about proper medical protocol. The boy wouldn't let go of her hand. The medics cleaned her split lip and checked her ribs, bruised, not broken, while Lucian stood at the window of his study, looking out at the crystal corridors below where the court was already gathering. Word had spread. The traitor was dead. The mortal girl had helped kill him. "You have a decision to make," Lucian said without turning. Chloe sat in the chair, his chair, the one behind the black stone desk, because Cashin had pulled her there and refused to move. "I figured. I can offer you wealth. Enough to erase every debt, buy any life you want. A penthouse in the district you were delivering to. A memory modification, so clean you'll never remember this world existed." He turned then, those onyx eyes unreadable. "You would wake up tomorrow believing you won a lottery. You would be safe.
Free.
Entirely mortal. Or you stay." He crossed to the desk, bracing his hands on the surface, leaning close enough that she could feel that cold, not cold presence again. "You become Lady Chloe Lynn, official royal courier and guardian to Prince Cashin. You learn our world. You navigate between the mortal and immortal as your father did, but with full knowledge and my complete protection. You will have enemies. You will face danger. And you will never be ordinary again." Cashin's grip on her hand tightened. Chloe looked at the boy, this small, fierce, half-mortal prince who smelled like antique silver and had stabbed a 300-year-old vampire to protect her. Then at Lucian, whose son was the only thing in any world that could make him hesitate. "The memory modification," she said slowly. "Would I forget him?" Lucian's expression flickered. "Yes." "Then no." "Chloe," Lucian started, something almost gentle in his voice. "I spent 6 months delivering food to people in penthouses who never saw my face. I was invisible, disposable, a cog." She stood, Cashin rising with her. You're offering me the same thing, just with better pay. Comfort in exchange for forgetting I ever mattered. She looked at Cashin. He called me the red jacket girl. He remembered me when he woke up. No one ever, her voice caught. I'm not walking away from that. Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then he opened a drawer in his desk and withdrew a small box. Inside, a ring, not gold, but platinum, with the crown and thorns crest rendered in diamonds and a single sapphire. This belonged to my mother, the last mortal to hold a formal position in this court. He took Chloe's hand, the same gesture Cashin had made, but entirely different. If you accept this, you accept everything it means. Chloe let him slide the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. That night, Thorne brought her belongings from her apartment. Everything she owned fit in 2 boxes. At the bottom of the second, she found her bright red delivery jacket, stained and torn. She held it for a moment, remembering the girl who'd worn it just 3 days ago. The girl who counted $8 tips and took shortcuts through alleys. Then she walked to Lucien's study, where a fire burned in a hearth that shouldn't exist this far underground, and threw the jacket in. Lucien watched from his desk, Cashin asleep on the sofa behind him. No going back now, he said quietly. Good, Chloe said. The red fabric curled and blackened, and Lady Chloe Lynn, royal courier and guardian, watched it burn. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as intriguing as you can ever imagine. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next story.